Building infrastructure and housing is the cornerstone of India's growth story. With a population of 1.4 billion and rapid urbanization, the demand for robust infrastructure and affordable housing has never been greater. Initiatives like Housing for All, National Infrastructure Pipeline are driving transformation. Smart Cities mission is also making strides. Yet challenges persist. Land acquisition delays, funding gaps, limited private sector participation remain hurdles. Affordable housing isn't just about homes. It's about access to water, sanitation, and electricity. Urban overcrowding and slums highlight the need for integrated planning. Let's take this opportunity to come together and build India.
That's right. Building India, the Infra agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all those who've taken time out to join us here for the NEWS9 Global Summit. I am Krishna Kumar. Let me begin by introducing the panelists for this discussion on Building India, the Infra agenda. Mr. Abhishek Kapoor, Group CEO, Puravankara Limited. Thank you so much for being with us. Mr. Khurshid Gandhi, Managing Director, Strategic Consulting at Cushman & Wakefield, India. Thank you, Khurshid, for being with us. And Mr. Monu Chauhan, Founder and CEO of Manu Bhumi. Thank you, Monu, for being with us over here. Thank you, gentlemen. The biggest and the most important question when it comes to India and its future, India's economy and its future, and that topic that many find it difficult to understand but love discussing is infrastructure. It's a topic that affects all of us because infrastructure is everything. Infrastructure is the roads that we traveled on to get here. Infrastructure is the house that we left, before we got here. And infrastructure is what we have over here as well. So multifaceted, multi-pronged development of infrastructure that India, frankly, has been extremely serious on for the last decade or so. Where are we going with it? Let me put a basic fact on the table first before I take it to the gentlemen on the panel. Nearly 11.5 crore rupees. That's the budgetary allocation for developing infrastructure in India. 11.5 crores, 11.2 lakh crore rupees to be precise. 11.5 lakh crore rupees, beg your pardon. Out of which, nearly 50% goes to roads and railways. That's the state of play as far as India's infrastructure is concerned. And this at a time when everybody is wondering, how are we going to buy homes? Considering at what rates they're selling in and how, and where wages are, how are we going to buy homes to live in from where we get onto the roads or railways to travel where we have to travel? And of course, in the last 10 years, the big focus has always also been on developing airports and ports in case we want to leave the road and take it to the air. Abhishek, let me bring this to you. You're a company that builds homes. When it comes to building infrastructure in this country, your home sales are going to depend a lot about the quality of infrastructure that surround these homes, isn't it? And I'm going to begin by asking you a very basic question. Nearly 11.5 lakh crore rupees. Do you think that outlay is enough? About 3% of India's GDP.
I think, honestly, it requires a much larger allocation.
Okay.
Currently, where we are in our journey, and I think we face those challenges every day in many cities of this country, is the fact that today the infrastructure which becomes the backbone for a quality living, and when I say infrastructure, we keep talking about road and transportation, but we forget water supply. We forget sewerage. We forget, today we want to recycle our garbage because that's becoming a big challenge. That's all part of the infrastructure, the whole service component of it, right?
Sustainability infrastructure.
Very big, very big. Power supply. And, those are the challenges with this rapid urbanization that's happening in this country. We're going to be having more than 40% of the people living in urban areas. Imagine that. And I think the population that's going to live there has to move around, has to consume, has to work, has to move within the city and outside of the city. The challenge is huge. I think what is really required is that infrastructure, which is the backbone of the country, has to get truly integrated into development of the cities and within the country, right?
Great point you make over there. In fact, I was just talking to Khurshid before we began, and he was talking about the same thing. We need more cities in this country, isn't it, Khurshid? I mean, there is a budgetary allocation of about, 48,000 crore rupees for the National Smart Cities Mission, yes, which is very important in its own way, of course, definitely, the smart cities. But it's not just about developing smart cities in India, it's about developing new cities. India doesn't have enough big cities.
Thanks. Let me see if I can give a little stats to this, right? We've got about 40 plus cities which are in the million population. There's about 350 cities which are population between 100,000 to a million, right? And if you look at that compared to anywhere in the world, no one has so many cities of this population, right? With the exception maybe of China, but that's another story, right?
Always.
What we've missed out historically, and by the way, our urbanization rate, that's low, right? We intend to be about 40% in another 5-7 years. So where are we creating new economic systems? The so-called tier 2 and tier 3 cities of India are core critical to building economic ecosystems and driving our economy, right? And I think the last 15 years has been a testament to how much infrastructure has been plugged in to connecting those cities, right? Most people live in tier 1 cities, Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, don't see what's happening on the ground in rural cities, right? Rural connections. We've done more electrification, we've done more roads, we've done more water connections, we've done more digitization. I think the big real one is digitization. It's a force multiplier that's happened and that's connected our economy. That's the real driver. These things, it's a snowball effect, right? And we spent the last, I would say, 30 years, because really India's, in my opinion, has grown since 1991. Really grown, right? We spent time building institutions, and now we are building India in the shape and form that we want it to be.
Fair point. Monu, let me also begin by asking you that question. In fact, before I come to you, Khurshid, I'm going to ask the same question I asked Abhishek. 11.5 lakh crore rupees, do you think it's enough?
No, I think that should be the annual allocation if we can get it. We need to desperately invest in infrastructure, right? I look at roads, Bombay City where I stay, and I say, it's not up to spec. We definitely need to grow.
I have a feeling there's going to be an unanimous agreement on this one. Monu, talk to us. What do you think about the state of India's infrastructure and the way forward?
First of all, I would like to, thank you for inviting me, and it's a truly honor to join this panel. And it's a very important topic you have raised, the infra agenda. First, you need to understand about the infrastructure. Infrastructure plays a very important and crucial role in India's economy and any country's economy, because infrastructure spans of multiple sectors like transportation. Transportation plays an important factor, because what I personally think, we are more dependent on the metro cities like Delhi, like Mumbai, like Bangalore, like Chennai, like Kolkata. But you need to understand, like I admire to Nitin Gadkari Saab, I used to say him, highway king. So if you talk about the infrastructure, you need to good highways, you need airport. But airport is not the only solution if you don't have jobs there. So if you are able to create the job there, digital connectivity, ecosystem, and self-sustained city is a more important point. Because if you talk about the tier 2, tier 3 city, we always talk about the tier 1 cities. It's overcrowded. But if we develop tier 2 and tier cities, there is a huge potential over there, because thankfully we are number 1 with the population 1.4 billion. And our PM yesterday has said about that they are aiming towards Viksit Bharat by 2047 with 5 trillion economy. We have set the agenda. My dear friend already said it's very less budget allocated for the infrastructure. We need, because there are high cost land, cost of construction plus land pooling scheme is very, if you go for the land acquire, there is a high cost there when you want to acquire. Thank you.
High cost and lots of time. Where do you think the lacuna is? One is, of course, clearly the message is loud and clear. Please allocate more for infrastructure in this country. But what else do you think are the challenges that, when it comes to, the intent is there. But what do you think have been the roadblocks or the challenges in India realizing its full potential when it comes to creating its own infrastructure?
Well, I can give a recommendation on what I think is a solution. Challenges are obviously many. But I would recommend, so, if you look at what's a building block for solving a problem of this scale and size for a country of our size, the building block is the policy framework. If you look at the building block of policy framework, and there you put housing, which I'm only talking about mid-income and affordable housing, and you put infrastructure in the middle as the second stack, and the third one and the most critical one is technology and services. If you just look at these three, and of course I'm taking sustainability as a part of it, because if you're going to be unsustainable, you don't want to create China here in terms of water pollution, etc., etc. I mean, they have tremendous problem. Thankfully, we are not there in so many ways. We have been able to protect our natural resources, specifically water tables and water, aquifers, and they're not polluted relatively. But if we don't take care of these things, it's going to be huge. So the connecting building block is policy. If we can have a comprehensive policy which addresses some of the cost-related issues as well, which is including land, capital, etc., etc., and we can get into a detail this thing. But the point is, policy is crucial, and that has to be an integrated solution to approach this. Public-private partnership can solve it, provided we have a framework to solve it.
Fair point. I really wanted to get there, isn't it? We can keep talking about wanting greater allocation, budgetary allocation to develop infrastructure in this country, but we're really not going to go anywhere if we don't have enough private sector money coming in, and more importantly, private sector money coming in with quality government partnerships, so that projects can be completed on time and have and deliver maximum impact.
I just had to add, right? If you're doing PPP and you look at the current stack of how PPP is structured, the private participation is about 30-odd%, right? You've got government participation, you've got foreign money. So the stack's not exactly even as 30-30-30. The government participation is significantly the largest, but there is almost 30% in private participation. The real trick is making that money back, right? Private participation wants to go in, and it's a model of making money at some point, right? Yes, you have to, you won't put money in if you're going to lose it. At the same time, there are strategic initiatives that these support, right? These are strategic inputs. Therefore, cost of that capital needs to be reduced significantly. I think financing is a core conversation we need to have, and it needs to build to be more accretive so that the cost of the projects also drop. And you definitely did add on acquisition. Land acquisition is a major issue in our country, whether we like it or not, whether it's for government or for private participation. It's a hugely difficult thing to do, given the fragmented nature of land and, of course, the costing that goes with it.
I'm going to let you continue. Let's ask the man in question, how difficult is land acquisition at this stage?
That's a very, very difficult question to answer.
Exactly why I asked.
It's quite hard in our country. I think, but the government has made great initiatives, great steps in digitizing land records. I think those are steps in the right direction. The cost of transaction is very high because there is a mix of state and central relationship over there. But definitely a challenge, and I think it is. For the scale of growth that we are looking at in this country in terms of population and economy and what needs to be done for these people to be able to work and live, I think streamlining land acquisition and ability to have clear title, which is the biggest challenge today. I mean, if you look at us, if I look at 100 deals, I think I'll land up with 10 and success is 3. That's the level of challenge that we are dealing with. And we are in 9 cities. Imagine the number of deals we are looking at every month. So it's a very big challenge.
And there you go. You begin with that, isn't it? When it comes to tackling India's infrastructure growth and putting it where it needs to be, it begins with land acquisition. What else do you think can be done? I also want to quickly also take time out to talk about something very important when it comes to developing infrastructure in India, and that is logistics. The Prime Minister Gati Shakti mission has more than 400 projects up and running. Talk to us, Khurshid. That is going to be a key piece in the overall infrastructure pie.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, right? The national logistics policy is core critical to where we are. If you look at where our cost of logistics is about 14%. So everything that we transport, travel, whether it's the clothes that we wear or the shoes that we also wear or the food that we eat, and particularly in urban centers, everything gets shipped in. We are not self-sustaining in urban centers, right? Everything gets shipped in. We are just very consumer economy driven, right? Especially now. That's not the global average, 8%, 14 versus 8, right? We've got a huge cost saving there, and this is annualized. So if you drop this by 6 basis points or even 4 basis points, sorry, not 4 basis, but 4 points, full points, then you've really saved that much on the economic scale, right? Your economic cost of your economic functionality goes up. Now, digitization has significantly helped. One of the very interesting things that I stumbled, across is the digitization of cargo transportation. So they're actually aggregating it. There are like Uber, right? You take a cab and you go on. There are people who've got apps out there, and it's happened very quietly, where they're essentially aggregating transportation loads. So trucks go from one destination to the other. They already know what load's going to go where and how it's going to get shipped out to another vehicle. That's actually saved cost, right? Our GST was one big, fillip in changing the way we costed our economy. It definitely spurred it. So I do believe multimodal transportation systems, logistics hubs, interconnected with our ports. And by the way, we've had a silent revolution on ports. People haven't realized it, but we've pushed very heavily on that. We've over time lost our strength to Singapore. We're now in the process of taking it back.
I really want to get there as well. A huge focus in the last at least 5 years has been the development of ports and airports. We're seeing the results on the ground, but still, even just airports, we have so much more miles to go before we sleep, as the adage goes.
That's true. So I think, like Khurshid, I'll just take on that further, because efficiency. See, we are a very, very cost-sensitive nation, and rightly so. We have too many mouths to feed, and we can't waste money in any way, right? And in our cost of services or cost of product, one of the biggest costs is transportation and efficiency and wastage. Like today, if you look at agricultural wastage, it's massive. How do you solve for bringing that efficiency? I think so. In my view, the way I see ports and both seaports and airports, I think it's going to be a huge solution to movement of goods and services, and including people. I think at Noida, we are making the largest one in the country, and I believe that that's going to be a huge solution for this part of the country. But I think we are looking at the population we are looking at is so large. The economic activity, I think we need to really prepare for the future in far more significant way than where we are today. But we are making the right moves.
We're making the right moves, but I'm just out of curiosity asking, when will homes get affordable?
That's a good question. No, so very interesting data point I'll share with you. More than 58% of recorded transactions in the country in residential real estate space is about 58% is in 50 lakhs to 1 crore category. That's mid-income. Affordable is commercially for private sector unaffordable. That's the honest truth. And you can, like Khurshid mentioned, you can do business if it's profitable. And how do you make it profitable for the private sector to participate actively to provide for that housing? I'll go back to my policy framework and say, for that, there are 4 costs really in the cost structure, where you bring in that efficiency and you'll be able to reduce the cost of acquisition for people. First one is the land cost itself and the transaction cost, the kind of stamp duties you are paying and the approval cost. This is one piece of our cost structure. The second piece of our cost structure is construction cost and the GST that you levy on the construction cost. Now, for some people, it doesn't matter, because in Bombay, you're selling at 1 lakh rupees a square foot. You don't care about the construction cost.
Khurshid is shaking his head.
But for people who are living in tier 2, tier 1 cities or smaller cities, you're looking at construction cost is actually 35 to 50% of the cost structure. And imagine adding GST to it, right? So you've killed that cost structure there, right? So that's the second part. The third part is the cost of capital. Now today, if you look at the cost of capital, the industry, if you're doing affordable housing or even mid-income housing, that is again a big part of the cost structure. Now, if the government decides to give this an industry, we are the second largest employer in the country in terms of people. If government decides to give you the industry status and gives you cost of capital for specifically for this sector at a particular price point, that will bring in the required supply, and it is required. Trust me, I'm saying, this is for law and order in this country. It is critical to have housing, and that's why the Prime Minister has initiated this PMAY. It's a huge initiative and it's working, but I think we need a far more robust policy framework to be able to get private sector to participate and provide the solution.
Yeah, please do. Before that, let me also put in my quip as well. India is that strange country where 4 to 5 crore rupee houses fly off the shelf on day one of the launch, and there's just not enough affordable housing.
Yeah, well, and Abhishek is going to gripe when I say this. I don't think the definition of affordable housing is right in India, right? Especially Bombay, any of the tier 1 cities, we've got it completely wrong, right? Affordable, given the nature of our population and their size of pocket, is absolutely, the bands are just wrong, right? It's just wrong. But it also feeds into the problem we've created. The problem is land acquisition. The problem is financing. The problem is regulations that take time. The problem is ability to put it up. There's technology. It's a cascading series of issues. How do we solve it, right? One of the solutions is tier 2 cities and focusing on growing economic systems in tier 2, tier 3 cities and spreading out growth evenly because we are lumpy, right? Maharashtra is perhaps the only state where there are a lot of multiple economic centers all over the state, and a couple of others are following suit now. UP, I think, is a great example of how they've invested very heavily in the last few years to build that. Our problem fundamentally is we've got to truly make affordable. We've got 350 million houses in India, and that's a great statistic, but if you look at the actual, how much of grade A or how much people can live in, it's not going to work. We need differential strategies. In my mind, affordable rental housing is core to the solution, whether that's for industrial housing, whether that's for students, whether that's for seniors. That's the answer, but it needs to be capped. It can't be open-ended.
Fair enough, but where is this affordable rental housing going to come from?
Okay, so again, we're back to the same original question. If we have the right framework of policy, you can do it. I want to just add one more part to what you were saying, Khurshid, earlier, is the infrastructure part. See, look, we have kind of not done many planned cities. The last one we did was Navi Mumbai. Before that, we did Chandigarh. After that, Noida. Yeah, that's the three, right? But how do you create the infrastructure backbone? So there are two parts to the cities, and we should just address this. One part is the rejuvenation of shanties and cities and dilapidated areas. And this is right now only Mumbai has a good scheme, government operated scheme, which is providing that facility. NCR, Delhi doesn't have it at all. Delhi needs it desperately. Imagine the quality of life people are living in Chandni Chowk, for example, right? So how do you bring in policy in all the cities in the country to have cluster redevelopment and solve for it where you already have the infrastructure? That's part one. Part two is, can you take the infrastructure backbone and connect it to another area which has got a planned city like a Noida or like a Navi Mumbai or like a Chandigarh, and then you start solving for that because you provided for people to feed in to those cities in affordable land costs and affordable way.
I want to add further in this because, when you talk about Noida, I come from Noida, it's no more affordable now. It was affordable 15 years back because, one developer has, launched one project and pre-launch it sold out, 8 crore property worth. So when you talk about the affordable meaning where anybody and everybody can afford. But people want to pay 20 lakh, but they want services for 1 crore. How it is possible? If you want good services, you need to pay. And secondly, you want to take about the private and public partnership, then it is possible. If public sector invites private people, come, we are providing the huge subsidy on land, and regulation and authorities are helping you, because it's a long delay process there, to be honest with you. In Noida, what happens? First, authority acquire the land from the farmers. In Haryana, it's vice versa. If you are a developer, you can directly take land from the farmers. So when you go for the bidding, then again, land cost is a problem. Secondly, if you talk about the international airport, so my dear friend has raised, Noida. It's a Noida International Airport. It's one of the huge and biggest airport of Asia. But it's not only the airports. If you talk about the surrounding, there is a film city coming up. It means there will be a generate of several thousand jobs. There are many other industries coming up here, because I'll count you as a tier 2 and tier 3. And communication it will not be a problem, because there is a metro coming up there. Hardly from there to Delhi, you reach only 1 hour. Even from Delhi, you go to Gurgaon, it takes 2.5 hours in the peak time. So this is one of the solution. When I stated the point, then you should go for the tier 2 and tier 3 city. If you really want affordable housing, then public sector should invite the developer, because 1 out of 10 developer only interested for the affordable housing, because they cannot make money, to be honest.
I just want to add one item, okay? It's not like affordable rental housing doesn't work, right? I can't remember the exact country. It's either one of the Scandinavians, Sweden or Finland, right? Affordable, they've created over the last 45 years a very large platform on affordable rental housing, mainly for, it's really an engine of social change, right? Particularly for youngsters moving out, and out there they typically leave home by about 17, 18 and they move to destinations like this, right? Those ecosystems are actually better than what a private developer put up. They're priced because they've got a very great mix of both the large size houses. They've got space for green areas, green gardens. They've got ecosystems built in. I mean, they've designed economic ecosystems. They're actually a very large hub for startups as well, right? That's happened over time. But it's easily affordable. It is part subsidized by the government, but they've got very long-term financing means. So what they've done is they've actually structured a fund that owns these assets that has been listed. Now we talk about REITs in India. These things have matured over time, so that they're putting more money back into the system, right? And that's what we really need to think about. When we think about housing in India, it's I'm going to sell it, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to sell it, right? I'm gone, I'm out, right? So Abhishek, so maybe that's one of the new REIT models for you all to consider.
Okay. Before Abhishek responds to that, I think Shri has a question. Shri, please go ahead.
So this question really comes out of genuine curiosity. You mentioned there's a developer in Noida launching for 8 crore. And it's happening in Gurgaon also. You launch and get sold out. So my real query is, who are these people who are buying these properties? Because if I were even a rich person, and rich people are rich because they're not stupid, right? What is the economic rationale for buying something which is like, let's say 8 crore, 10 crore, when the rental on that property is going to be minuscule? So it's a genuine query I'd like to know, because you guys have the database on your customers. So who are these people who are buying these fancy properties?
I want to answer this question because, people from this state only, they are not alien. But after COVID, what they realized, they are not, believing in savings. They are spending money on luxury. So people, what they think of, because there is a gap of demand and supply. If you talk about 15 years before, there is huge supply. But if you talk today in Noida itself or in Gurgaon, there is no supply. Can you see people, DLF or other developers, sorry, I am not taking name, but any developers coming and they don't have inventory much, because previously one project was selling in 3 years. In today's era, one project is selling in hours only, because there is a huge demand and less supply. That's the reason people are taking and, getting the inventory.
I have a view which may not be appreciated, but I'll still say it, never the same. I don't know where it is coming from. And I think it'll unfold in next 12 months. Because real demand, if you look at it, is for couples who are earning and wanting to buy between 2 to 3 crores. In fact, it will be much larger, as I mentioned earlier, below 1 crore, between 50 lakhs to, that is the segment which is end user driven. I don't know who is buying there.
Talk to HDFC, they'll tell you that the average ticket size for home loan is about 45 lakh rupees.
You're right. You're
so
right.
that is your typical customer. So this customer is probably not even borrowing.
So if he's not borrowing, then I'm not sure where he's paying from, or if he's paying at all. And that's what I'm saying. So we'll find out in next couple of years as to how it unfolds. It is logically difficult to process, saying that almost everybody and every sold out project in the market today, especially in NCR, is between 7 crores and now we are talking about 100 crores and 190 crores. I have no idea. So, I don't know exactly where it is coming from.
I'll give you, you like stats, right? I live and breathe that stuff. So I'll give you the outcome of that, the summary. We've looked at all the data for the last 30 years across any key market, and you will notice prices rise like this and they plateau. They rise like this and they plateau, right? And when they rise, it is initiated by speculators. And then end users feel it's FOMO, so they jump onto the bandwagon, suddenly realize it's not going anywhere because of the speculators are bright money, right? They've already seen, the market's going to tank or stop growing, so they pull out of the market. Demand starts dropping. Rationalization happens typically 2-3 years, and then it starts picking up again. We've seen that in NCR, and then the price shoots up exponentially, right? To 2023, until 2023, from 2020 to 2023, the prices were flat in the NCR, and then they exploded overnight, right? Everybody got onto that, because you're right, there was no supply at one point in time, right? And suddenly, there was a surge in demand, and now it's again on the thing of plateauing. But yes, there is a price point and a market point that is agnostic of whatever price you put it at. Flats in Bombay at 40 crores, just sell. 40 crores upwards. There's a market for that. A certain number of flats sell. If the market's good, market's bad, it'll sell. The price sensitive, and it's not a pyramid. People, let's forget, it's not a pyramid. It's a flat base where everybody, the salary, buys their stuff, and I think that really tanks off at about 2.5 crores, right? You can push it up a little more, go to about 3.5, but after that, it's a very thin spire, right? And that is agnostic of economic situation.
Like as they say, there is no recession for luxury, is there?
Yeah, so I little bit differ with what Khurshid says. I think you can stretch generally salaried class with the family income, husband, wife working, even up to 4 to 5 crores. But if you go to between 5 and say 25 crores, is the guys where you will see they have got a lot of impact. Like for the moment you see the stock market going up and down, you will see a direct correlation of allocation towards real estate. Of course, then above 25, 30 crores, they don't care because they have too much money, and therefore it's agnostic to the markets or the economic growth, and therefore that demand never goes away. That's correct.
At this stage, I have to ask this question. Okay, we have a question coming in from, please go ahead, sir.
So my name is Amitabh Ghosh. I live in the Washington area. I thought I'll give you a different perspective. So the gentleman asked this question about the rental price, say at a high-end apartment in Bombay, like Samudra Mahal, is at Worli, right? And that's the largest price. So that doesn't make sense as an investment. It's very small compared to what you would, the same money if you put in an investment account. So in our area, in the Washington area, for the last 20 years, houses have become like 4 times in value. And so right now, the entry price of a single family home is probably $1 million. And who's buying? I think people are buying it as an investment. It's no longer just a dwelling. And I think that is happening. It's not even luxury. It's just a generic house with a 2-car garage in suburbia, not even close to the happening places. So I think there's a very big change and this is driven worldwide by scarcity. So like if you go to downtown Boston, the entry price of an apartment is $5 million. If you go to Manhattan, of course, it's much more expensive. So I'm just saying people are no longer thinking of, so if you bought NVIDIA stock, right, it went up by 20 times. It might crash, but this thing will remain solid. So it's no longer people are buying for their just dwelling, they're also socking away some money for safety. Thank you.
I just want to add, that's actually Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, a NASA scientist who's worked on the Mars rover project. He's being very modest about himself, but he's a very distinguished scientist, yeah.
I'll give you a little insight of what's happening in a Mumbai market, for example, which is very heavy on redevelopment space. And also in some of the other markets where we are seeing a very steep rise in rentals. So what's also very interesting that's happening is that the arbitrage between rental and EMIs is going down very significantly. So that is motivating a lot of people to make a buying decision. In a market like Bombay, which is, I think half the city is going into redevelopment for some reason, everybody's out there to redevelop their properties. They're all going to go out and live somewhere. And therefore the rental cost of rent in Mumbai, I think is really going to go through the roof. And therefore one theory is that you'll also see that arbitrage come down so significantly that people start preferring to buying another house than staying on rent.
Yeah, thanks to those policies 33.7 and 73.72B, they are 39, sorry. Also, there's approximately, I think, as last check, there's about 1,800 projects that would go into self-redevelopment. So, yeah.
Okay, we're completely out of time over
Just
here.
one quick question. If you look at the real estate market in India, we don't seem to ever have a serious bubble or a bursting of the bubble that typically happens in other markets. Is it because the fact that there's a lot of, non-accounted for money that comes into the market, or why is it that it seems fairly immune to all the rules of economics, except for the law of demand and supply? We haven't seen a big burst. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's the only one that matters. We are so chronically undersupplied, right? That's the only answer that we have consistent. We are chronically undersupplied.
Khurshid, I think we had the longest down cycle in the real estate sector, which lasted 10 years. 2013 to 2023 was actually 22. Actually, was a cycle which was the longest down cycle in a manner of speaking, where developers generally, relatively, where. See, the thing is that there is demand, there is demography in this country, and there is clearly, what is also happening is, so I'll give you one data point. In 2013, we had about 50,000 plus developers. That number of developers dropped to about 1,300 or so in 2021. And that is, is a clear indication of the down cycle. The fact that people went out of business for multiple reasons, of course. So the industry is matured to the extent that industry now also is able to modulate the supply. Wherever you will see suddenly the supply stacking up, people will slow down the launches. And therefore you'll be able to kind of modify your supply side scenario, and therefore you may not see significant drop in prices. What may also change is that people will start making different ticket sizes. For example, you will see people going back towards smaller units in times to come because the prices have gone up and affordability may be a little restricted. Those changes may happen, but we have the demography on our side, and therefore demand is always going to be there. And the worst that will happen is that you will see plateauing of the price, which Khurshid talked about earlier.
All right, I think this is such an interesting conversation. We can keep having it over and over again, and we'll still be wanting to have more of it. But I'm afraid, unfortunately, we're completely out of time over here. Ladies and gentlemen, huge round of applause for the panelists that we got for this. Thank you so much.